Okay, so I'm live on Instagram, live on YouTube.
That means I'm live too.
Well, you're not live on Instagram unless you join me. Oh, and I better change the volume here because I'm hearing myself. Okay,
You're breaking rules.
I'm breaking rules. I know. Well,
So,
I'm a rule breaker. What can I tell you?
for people that watch replay on YouTube, Julie did not tell me that it automatically goes to YouTube and stuff like that on the
Mhm.
lives. I'm not used to recording live. I'm used to, you know, editing post and making a clean video or podcast.
Mhm.
So I know the
Yeah.
sound there
Yeah.
is just unedited and
It's
out
raw.
there.
It's raw.
It's
It's raw,
raw.
by the
So
way.
if you're like, oh, that sound,
Hmm.
it doesn't sound like it takes its own tips.
Wow.
It was
Listen,
live.
it's live, and
And
people know what live means.
live's a whole different animal.
People know
And
what a live
I haven't
means,
really done
Daniel.
lives,
Well, here
audio
we
for
are.
lives.
Well, here we are. This is Podcast Boot Camp from Casa de Confidence Productions. This is day 2.
Welcome to day 2.
Welcome to day 2. I'm very excited that we're here and we're spreading the time that we're doing these lives so that people who normally couldn't join when we did it yesterday, they'll join today. But again, the recording is for you and it will be here in YouTube,
Mm-hmm.
or you can comment on Instagram recording and I will send you the recording. So super excited. And again, if you're joining live on Instagram, hello. I'm also live on YouTube. This is our day 2 boot camp of how to start a podcast. And I'm Julie and joined over there. Here, hold on. I'll go do that's over
I am
there, my
Dan.
producer, and he's here
And
as well.
I am Dan, and I promise. I
You
know
promise?
yesterday I was a little chatty. Today we're going to keep it a little tight. We're going to
Well,
keep it tighter.
we're going
We're
to
going to.
keep it tight, people.
So,
Okay. By
so
the end of today, Daniel, what is the objective for today?
well, all of you guys will know how to record high quality audio,
Mm-hmm.
structure engaging episodes, and
That's right.
launch their podcast successfully on major platforms. Before we get started, though,
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
why don't
And
you go over and recap
I'm going,
quickly what we
yeah.
did yesterday?
Let's recap yesterday. First of all, we talked about your equipment for podcasting. We talked about whether you needed to have a high end, low end, or middle of the roadmap. We gave you choices. We want to make sure that some people like to have very high end microphones. You can. Some people want to have a small investment, then we can. We gave you those. And again, if you're catching the replay, let me know and I'll give you the link for the recording. The
Mm-hmm.
other thing that we talked about is what should you be doing in addition to that first day of having equipment? You need to go ahead and have a place where you're going to, like I talked about yesterday, the envelope that delivers your podcast, and that is your hosting platforms. We talked about all the different places where you can host your podcast, the pros and cons, and we delved into those. And of course, we talked about the back of the house, how to structure an episode and begin to set your sights on having a wonderful show that will have the reach and can support your message, but more importantly, build community or bring the tips and tools and content that people
Mm-hmm.
are yearning to hear from you. Tech should not be a reason why you don't start a podcast, or the not knowing what to do first, second, or third should not be a reason either.
Mm-hmm.
We have a document that's called Launch Your Podcast in 30 Days. You can
Mm-hmm.
put it here in the comments, podcast in 30 days, and then I will send you that document as well, or I'll send you the link to where you can get it. And I think that's my recap, Daniel, of day 1. Again, choosing the right setup and branding your podcast. That's the other thing why I didn't recap, but you need to have a name for your podcast. The name is important. It needs to communicate who you are, what you do, so that it's a no-brainer for people that
Mm-hmm.
find you. And again, there's specific cover art that you need to have. And we talked about what kind of cover art, how to do it, and of course, planning those first episodes. So why don't you tell the listeners or the audience members, what are we covering today?
Well, today we're going to cover the exact steps to record and edit your podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Well, not exact steps, because we're not going to dive into the different software and stuff like that. But
Ooh, but he can help with that.
How to structure episodes for engagement, and
Mhm.
that's a Julie department.
Mm.
How to launch and get listed on Apple, Spotify, etc.
And all the
Do
other directories, because there's more than one directory.
you have any water?
I do have some water, my
May I have
love.
some of your water?
Here you are.
We're married. I'm allowed to drink out of her bottle.
Yeah, he can drink out of my bottle. What can
Mm,
I tell you? All right, cheers to
thank
you.
you.
Hmm.
Tip number one,
All right, tip number one, everybody.
make sure you have water.
Oh, that's a good tip. I like
Make
that.
sure you have water.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so actually, that's not tip number one, but that is a tip.
Okay.
So we're going to talk about recording high quality audio.
Yeah, best practices for high quality audio. So go ahead, Daniel.
Good news, Julie already said it. You don't have to be a sound engineer to have great audio, but there
That
are a
is
few things you
correct.
must get right.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and these things that, you want to start with a good base, a good recording
Mm-hmm.
that makes it easy to edit and it makes it, the less that has to be done to your recording in post processing, the better it's going to be.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Yeah.
I can make some really bad audio sound great, but sometimes you can't, and it's very difficult.
Yeah.
Um,
So what
Number
else?
one, you want to find a quiet space. A lot of people have heard about, the stories of people doing their first podcast back in the day in their closet.
Dan would not let me record in my closet. I just have to say.
The reason for that
Mm-hmm.
is all the clothes in that closet is a great absorber of echoes and noise,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
background noise. And actually, some people have recorded voice over audio in their closets
That
before
is
before
true.
getting a before getting boost. But
So,
I'm not
okay,
saying
go ahead.
crawl in your closet and make a recording. But what you want to do is have a relatively um, quiet room
Hmm.
without a lot of echo.
And by the way, one thing that we talked about briefly yesterday, but I want to talk about again today. Very important when you're recording, and we talked about a mic, but we have actually foam for us here. And the foam is to take care of the plosives because you don't want to be too much of
Well,
that.
this type of microphone with the foam actually
Mhm.
does not block plosives
Yeah. Well,
that much. So the
go
way
figure.
the microphone is designed, this microphone is designed to knock plosives down.
Mm. And we
If you
have
have a
two
micro,
different kinds of mics, dynamic and condenser.
you can't do condenser. Don't do
Okay, don't do
condenser.
condenser, he says.
Dynamic. So a lot of times, if you have a microphone where the element is way at the end, sometimes you'll see people with a little disc in front of their microphone. That's called
That's
a
right.
pop filter.
A pop filter. We had pop
But
filters in one of our
yeah,
microphones, but that's
all of our microphones up to this point had pop filters on the outside.
yeah,
This particular microphone has an integrated pop filter.
yeah.
So, and it's just by design. So, anyway, find a quiet space. If you're
Hmm.
in a room that has like nothing in it, that's not a great environment. We have, let me see, curtains on all the windows here.
Hmm.
I got a pile of computer parts over here.
Yes, he does have computer parts
Soft,
everywhere.
soft, soft is good. You know what is good? If you have a bookshelf, books are great absorbers of sound.
Hmm.
We have a bookshelf over in the corner, and
That's
it
right. I'm
absorbs
not going to
sound
show
very
it to
good.
you because it's very messy.
So anyway, I don't want to get into that too deeply,
Hmm.
but pick your space correctly. If you're doing video, never sit with your back to the window.
Yes.
That makes it
Main.
very, very difficult to do. You want to have
Yes.
the window in your face.
Like I have a window there and I have a window over there. And these are the reasons that
And
I sit here mainly because I have my light here and I have two lights, but I do have the lights specifically because I'm in video a lot.
yeah, so but yeah, the lighting you should
Mhm.
have is actually you forgot your backlights.
Oh, I forgot. I'm not going to turn them on now because we're
Okay.
we're going. We
So
gotta keep
anyway,
it rolling, Daniel.
so make sure the lighting is in front of you, not
Mhm.
behind you. The hardest thing to do for video to recover video is having light behind you. That doesn't mean accent lighting can't happen, but you don't want to have your back to a window.
Mhm.
Now, I'm going to talk about mic positioning. Now, if you look at Julie right now,
Mm.
she's textbook.
Textbook.
If you take your hand and put it up, you should be about that far
That's right. One this far
away from your mic.
away from the mic. Mhm.
Depends on the mic. Some mics like the SM7B that we talked about yesterday, that $400 microphone, you can really get up on it.
Ooh,
And
you can really get up on it.
if you hear the difference, when I get up on this one, it gets a little a
Loud.
little bassy, a little
Mhm.
different,
Yeah.
and some people love that. But if you move around, you're gonna
Mhm.
that tone's gonna change. So if you have that one hand away, um,
It's a good distance.
this is called proximity effect,
Ooh,
and it's you know
fancy name.
in the land of stuff like
Mhm.
that. But if you're away from it like this, you won't get that proximity effect. It'll be more even sound and easier to edit later.
Excuse me.
Obviously, if you're going for an effect, you can do something like that.
Mhm.
We have the benefit of having sound processing on our mixer, which makes sure that the sound doesn't get too loud.
Mm.
Um, and that's something called a condenser, but I don't want to go into that.
Don't
That's
go into that. Stay on
so
task here. Come on. 4, this is the proper length
2 to 4 inches.
and 2 to 4 inches.
So, and the other thing about a microphone is the microphone is not the star of the show. You are.
Ooh, I like
And
that.
and if you have that microphone, what I typically tell people is to have it about, it's not, you don't have to have it straight in front of you.
Mhm.
You can have it like 45 degrees. Often I'll have mine down and pointed up
Mhm.
because your sound falls.
Oh, okay.
Sound falls. If you look at people, a lot of times, maybe in churches, you see the mics on the podium, they're at their mouth or below it. Because I
Mm.
used to do sound for chapel in college, and that was how we position those mics because sound falls.
But for podcasters and people that want to learn the nitty gritty,
So,
we talked about the mic positioning.
so the positioning, I typically recommend that you put the microphone about 45 degrees,
Mhm.
right?
Yes.
0, 90, 45, about that far away from your face. And what you want to do, you don't want to speak into the mic. You
Mhm.
want to speak past the mic.
Pass the mic.
You want to project past the mic as if it doesn't exist. But
Yes.
you want to stay where you are
You want to
if you're
stay where
using
you
this
are.
type of mic.
Absolutely.
There's other things too. I mean, you see these really high end videos where you don't see a mic at all. They're
Mhm.
either wearing a
A
professional
lapel.
lapel mic, or they have a boom mic over their head
Mhm.
that's barely out of the picture.
And by the way, I
And
know that we are probably giving you way too many details,
mhm.
and do not let all of these
Yep.
details overwhelm
What
you. We're going to keep it at a high level, Daniel.
Yep. What I want you to do is forget I ever said boom mic, because I tried that. And you know what? In a home environment, it doesn't work unless you've done a lot of sound treatment. So
Mm.
mic positioning, number one tip. That's good right there. What I said about drinking. So when you have a dry mouth,
Mhm.
you hear a lot of you hear that smacking in the microphone.
Oh,
It's
smacking.
called clicking, and your
Mm.
mouth will click. So you want to make sure. And I was hearing my mouth click, and in my headphones, because I listen in the studio headphones,
Yeah,
and I heard that click. So always do not be afraid to take a drink during an interview
that's correct.
or
I
during a podcast. You can even make it part of the show. Like, what
like
are you
we
drinking
do.
today?
We
Uh,
talk about what we are drinking mainly
mhm.
because we like to have the accessibility to
Yep.
water or sometimes wine. Who knows?
So speaking clearly and naturally.
Mhm.
Now, clearly and naturally, use a warm conversational tone. I mean, if part of your stuff is instructional and you have a certain style that you want to
Mhm.
use, that's fine. That's fine. That's what you're doing. But just be yourself,
Yeah.
warm and conversational.
Mhm.
One last thing, as I tell Julie this all the time.
Oh boy,
What do I tell you to swallow?
my coughs,
No.
my yawns. I guess I don't swallow whatever it is that he tells me because I don't remember.
Swallow your swallow your likes, your butts,
Oh,
your ums.
mm,
Um,
like he's
so
doing right now.
one thing, and I don't speak on the mic that much, so I'm not entirely mindful of it.
Yes.
But if you hear me have a little gap in my speech, it's because I'm swallowing an
Mm.
Those are called filler words, and we as humans tend to do it, especially in Western culture. We want to fill up space. Eastern culture, if you look at their art, it's usually a white canvas with minimal things in it. You look at a Western painted canvas, it's filled from frame to frame, it's full. So think like a Eastern culture, minimal.
And by the
And
way,
if you feel that you're
yes.
trying to get your thought, collect your thought, and this is something that comes in practice. But I think a thing that I think helps is I think it helps Julie, and she doesn't do it a lot anyway. There's times where it'll get away from her, but it is something to me saying, swallow your ums.
Mm.
She'll swallow those. That I don't mean make a gulp sound, but instead of letting that out, swallow it. Um, there's something to be said about blank space, which adds
Mhm.
impact. And sometimes when you like when I'm editing a podcast where like someone's guest
Mhm.
has a lot of filler words, it drives me crazy.
It does. But
um,
here's the thing.
oh, I just did it.
You are a beginner and do not
Mhm.
worry about being imperfect. If we are
Absolutely.
overwhelming you because we are saying swallow the ums, oh my God, there's a lot to remember.
Mhm.
Just remember that we're talking about you need to have a mic, you need to have this length on the mic,
Mhm.
you need to speak conversationally.
Yep.
If you happen to have a lot of ums, then the more that you record your podcast, the more that you'll become
The
aware of
more the
these and the
Yep.
more that you will be able to
And
taper those.
and that's something I do with my clients is I have an understanding with my clients that I will give you feedback. I'm not criticizing. I'm not saying you're awful at this.
No, we,
I'm 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 just saying I noticed a little more filler words this time around.
mm,
Just and and that works. And I'll ask, do you want those removed?
mhm.
I typically don't like to remove them because, especially in videos, it can make it a little jittery. But if a client wants them removed, they can be removed. Anyhow, on to more. Um,
Software and recording tools.
now
Now that we've talked about,
we talked
yeah.
about software recording tools yesterday. So if you want to go back and
Mhm.
rewatch that, I think we went pretty deep
Yeah,
into
we
that.
did, but just to reiterate, if you're doing a solo episode, you are maybe you yourself and you, right? Not me.
Mhm.
You can use the free version of Audacity. It's free. You don't have to invest a lot of money. You can also use GarageBand if you use a Mac and no money invested into the recording tools. Now, if you're
Hey,
going to
if you're doing a solo episode, you can use the audio recorder or the camera app that's on your
Mhm,
computer
mhm.
and just record there and it'll put it in your documents.
Yeah.
You can do something as simple as that.
And then, of course, you have the interview for an interview podcast. Again, there's services like Riverside FM, Zoom, Squadcast.
Mm-hmm.
And for live podcasting, a lot of people use StreamYard and Restream.
Mm-hmm.
And that's another great option too. And some people use it for their solo and or they use it also for their interviews. But again, you choose one and stick with it. The more that you use it, the more that you'll realize is the right solution for you. Or when you get comfortable, then you can decide what the next option will be.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, and that's you choose what you want to do. Julie uses Zoom.
I use
Uh,
Zoom.
I if you want better, a little better image quality than Zoom, you go
Hmm.
with Riverside and Squadcast. The audio quality is also better on those because it saves a higher. I'll just say it's a more quality audio recording. But if you listen to Julie's podcast,
Hmm.
she sounds great anyway
All right.
because she's got an editor.
Well, now let's talk a little bit about something that happened to me.
Ooh.
I did an interview for Casa de Confidence, and it was a phenomenal interview. Oh
Mhm.
my goodness. We talked about all kinds of things and we had so much fun. It was an incredible interview with my guest.
Hmm.
And one of the things that she kept saying, "Oh, say that again," because I guess, and I thought maybe she just was deaf and wasn't hearing me. But no, it turned out that my microphone was not on. So you always want to make sure that before you start recording, that you do some sort of little test to make
Yeah.
sure that your mic is on. What has
And
happened to me
and
is
the,
I've had Dan's microphone instead of mine on.
yeah, she she was muted my mic, so it was picking her up from
Mhm.
across the room. But yeah, you need to test it ahead of time
Yeah.
and make sure on the tool that you're selected on the right microphone because if you don't check that, you like I have this microphone here.
Mhm.
My webcam has a microphone in it,
Oh, that's
a
true.
horrible microphone in it.
Mhm.
Your laptop has a microphone in it. Make sure it's selected to your correct microphone.
That is correct. And by the
So,
way, when I first started podcasting and when I started to do interviews as well, because I am on camera, and this used to, it was on my old laptop. I actually had a sticker, two little red dots next to the camera to remind me to look directly at the camera
yep.
because this is me looking at the camera as I'm speaking to you. And now this is me looking at the screen. See, you need to make sure that you're making eye contact
Yep.
and when you're doing an interview, if you're making eye contact, then the viewer will feel more connected.
Yeah, like this is me looking at the camera. This is me looking at my notes.
Mm,
It's a little I look a little shifty, but anyway, I have one more tip.
okay.
This is from a sound engineer point of view. Too loud is bad. Too
Mm,
soft is okay. So if you make a
oh,
recording and this setting up your sound and setting up your levels and doing that in the computer, that's a whole thing that a lot of microphones, oh USB microphones, it's pretty good. And if you ever need help with that, uh,
hmm,
I that's what I do. But if you do a recording and it's too loud and causes what's called clipping, that's unrecoverable. The
mm,
audio doesn't exist. If it's too loud, boom, it clips your audio and
hmm.
it doesn't exist. You can't make that sound good.
Well, you're getting very deep,
Yep. I'm
complicated for
just
people
saying
who like may not even
if
like.
you but if you feel your sound is a little soft
Hmm.
and you're doing post editing, that's okay. But if you feel it's too loud, stop what you're doing and you're going to want to turn your microphone levels down a little bit. That's all. Other
Or
than
and again, if you are a beginner, do not let this overwhelm you. You want to go ahead and pick up and start. That's the best thing to
yep.
do. And if you have a question, you can always ask us, ask a friend that podcast. You can ask Dr. Google, but ultimately, do not let the tech and the complications
Nope.
keep you from getting started.
So anyway,
Okay.
I hope you got something out of this. Hope you got a couple tips.
Those are good tips, Daniel. I
Now,
like, and by the way, I totally agree. You need to make sure that as you keep going, you will find that these tips help you because if you have a well sounding podcast, a good sounding podcast, people will stay. And that's mainly what you want. Now, let's talk about the winning formula for a podcast.
yeah,
The
Julie's going to talk about how you structure an engaging episode.
first, you want to go ahead and start with a hook. Why? Because in a world where our attention is so low and we are competing for so many different things in the world, if you are not hooking the audience, whether it be the viewer or the listener from the very beginning, next, they're going to move to the next thing. So you want to grab the attention with a powerful statement, with something that maybe incites curiosity or perhaps makes the listener think, oh, wait a minute, what does that mean? Or if you have a guest, maybe you want to tease out a little bit about who, not necessarily boring, read their bio, but you can talk about, hey, if you've ever struggled with hemorrhoids, I know that everybody at one point or another does. And we're going to find out in this episode how to be able to fix hemorrhoids. And right. So now that's a little bit of a hook.
I want to listen now.
You want to listen to that? Well, I don't know why I just said hemorrhoids.
I
That
don't
just
know,
came
maybe
out of nowhere.
because you're, of a certain age.
Thank you, Daniel. Lord. Okay. So now your first 30 seconds, that's your hook. The second thing that you want to have is you want to have an intro. You want to share with the listeners your topic and why it matters. Again, a hook is important. Get them
Hmm.
in and then keep them in by transitioning with that topic or the sense of what they're going to be hearing.
Hmm.
So that's again maybe a minute, 2 minutes. And for me, when I'm doing interviews, once I do the little hook statement and I welcome the guest, then I start typically with a question that couches for the listener what we're going to be talking about, right?
Hmm.
And then you go
If
into your
you
content.
if you listen to some podcasts, a lot of people will do this. Like Julie would do a hook and then an intro. A lot of people in post edit
Hmm.
between one and two, they'll that's where they'll squeeze in their little transition, which is the intro to your podcast. Whether you
Hmm.
have a little music thing, and the thing is, the music in your intro that you have every week, keep it tight, keep it short. You don't want to give people a chance to get distracted and walk away. Don't have a whole minute
Yeah.
intro.
Yeah.
A quick 15, 20 seconds.
And by the way, a lot of times, and I still have music in my episodes, but and for me, people are used to the intro music, and then it sort of becomes part of the branding.
Mhm.
But if you're starting out, you don't have to necessarily have that music. Just create something that is going to bring the listener into what you're teaching. Is going to bring the listener. Oh my goodness, hello. I'm getting distracted by my beautiful Instagram. By the way, we have viewers on Instagram.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna say
Yes, Daniel.
number three,
Yes.
after your hook and intro,
Hmm.
the main content.
Main content after you have your intro. You are correct. And I think a lot of people script their episodes, which is fantastic. And if you don't know how to do that, that's another way in which you can really involve the listeners into what you're doing is by having that hook and intro that is going to let them know what you're working on.
Mhm. And typically you decide how long your content's going to be. I mean,
Hmm.
we keep it 15, 30 minutes, something like that.
Hmm.
Julie actually does slightly longer conversations with people. And to be clear, we're talking about podcasts that are typically a teaching interview. We're talking
Hmm.
about podcasts that are interviews. We're not talking about podcasts that are like uh, TV shows on a podcast,
Yeah.
like Adnan Syed. What was the name of that one? Um,
Uh, not okay.
one
Cereal
cereal. That's a different thing. That's a
produced.
highly produced show.
Yeah.
And I listen to some podcasts sometimes that are books.
Hmm.
You know, people they're doing books. That's
Right.
a whole different category there. And
And again,
yeah.
I think and this is where your personality can come in. And I do want to give a shout out to someone that has a really cool podcast, and
Oh
she's
yeah.
part of the New England Podcasters Group, and that's my
Ooh,
friend Amy Fagan. But her podcast, Grounded in Maine,
Amy.
she has a really great way of easing you into the episodes, and you are going to find your own groove as you start the podcasting. And it doesn't
Mhm.
have to be exactly like somebody else, right, Amy? It can be, and it's scary in the very beginning, but you will be able to feel a little more confident the more that you do it.
Is
That
Amy
is
in the room?
incredibly key. Yeah, Amy's in, it's
I
in,
cannot see who's in the room
she's
because
on Instagram
because I'm on the
because we haven't figured out how to get on Instagram with Dan as well.
we haven't figured out how to do this live
Listen,
thing
we're
where I
going live.
see.
It's one thing at a time, people.
So, all right. So, Julie,
Yes, Daniel.
now we got the main content out of the way. It's in
Hmm.
there. That's your brilliance. That's what you're how you're
Yeah.
sharing your story, how you're sharing your your brilliance and how you can help people, how you can help the world, or how you can entertain people. What's the next thing, Julie?
The next thing is okay, bear with me because this is live. And of course, I closed the window.
Well,
You take it away.
I'm going to call you to action. And I know you know this because you wrote this.
Yes, yes,
And
yes.
we know this is the main thing. This is the call to action. This is where you ask your listeners to
Okay,
subscribe,
very
leave a
good, very good. You're
review,
right.
and connect with you. You know what?
Yeah.
You know what though?
What?
It's okay to ask people to subscribe in the beginning, in the middle, in
Hmm.
the end. You can work that into the
Listen,
conversation. You can, y- and
give us a
that's
review.
something that people don't always do.
That's right. A call to
And
action is very important. Now, when you are podcasting and this is part of your attraction strategy, then it's very important that your call to action is really related to a way in which you can capture your listeners email and make the connection, because once people know you, right, they get to know you, they are attracted to your show or the episode. The next thing is you want to go ahead and keep in contact with them. You want to foster the relationship, and the only way to foster it is by continuing the back and forth communication.
yep.
So you can offer a free opt-in, you can ask them to sign out to your newsletter, or you can say, hey, if you like this episode, I have the blank, 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 right? And then you can give free tools so that people can then, right, get something of value to them in exchange for giving you the email where you can nurture them. And you
Hmm.
can, again, ask listeners to take that action so that you can continue to grow together. But the call to action comes in the last bit of your episodes. Now, I'll be curious, Dan,
Yes.
what do you think is the reason that most people don't have a call to action?
Hmm. I have no idea.
Poor planning, perfect previous
Ooh.
planning prevents problems.
Have something.
And by the way, I am speaking from the point as a beginning podcaster 5 years ago. I love to talk and I love to interview, but I never had that specific call to action, or it was very haphazard. Sometimes I did, sometimes I didn't, but mainly it came because I did not have a structure.
Hmm.
We moved on to learning and gaining more experience, and of course now we know how important it is. Again, your hook, then you have your intro, then your main content, and your call to action. So
Now,
these are very important things that you can plan in advance.
can I add a bonus tip that
Oh,
I
please.
have learned from an incredible coach?
Oh, who would that be, that incredible coach?
Well, I can't mention this coach's name because it'd
No,
be a
it really
conflict
may
of
not be me.
it's a conflict of interest since I'm married to her.
Oh, look at me.
So I'm not going to
He
mention
is talking
her
about
by
me.
name. Actually, I should mention your first. No,
No, just get to
Julie,
it.
you shared this.
Go ahead.
Um, like you said, plan your episodes ahead. But
Hmm.
probably one of the greatest tools, a quick reference tool when you're doing your podcast
Hmm.
is it's not a script. A script is great if you like working off a script,
Hmm.
but bullet points. Bullet points, it doesn't confine you to that script,
Yeah.
but it reminds you of everything that you wanted to speak about.
Hmm.
Every little bit, it's there, and you see those bullet points.
Yep.
They're clear, they're concise,
Hmm.
and you don't miss those.
By the
Bullet
way,
points
Amy,
are
Amy from Grounded
incredible.
in Maine is saying that, Dan, that in the very beginning she was scared to ask and
Hmm.
didn't script her episodes. So she would forget to add that. And I think that don't be afraid to make the mistakes. The
Hmm.
mistakes are the learning opportunities that you will have with your podcast.
I'm going to be all cliche,
Go
but
ahead,
it's a
be
good
cliche.
cliche.
Go ahead.
Our victories and our successes are built on our mistakes.
Victories and successes are built on your
I was going
mistakes.
to say the corpses of our mistakes,
Oh,
but that's a little
that's
dark.
that's dark.
Sorry.
I'd like to think of it as our learning opportunities and the way that we grow in confidence is from seeing the evidence that we've done the thing, right? So, my confidence in having a scripted and by the way, it's not scripted, but having some of these major points in my podcast came from doing it and from not doing it right and saying, oh, I forgot to do that. Let me make sure I
Mhm.
do it. And now I have that little cadence and I keep it on my phone, but I have my little points that as we're recording, maybe our intro, that I make sure that I hit. But that becomes second nature and becomes habitual
Hmm.
once you've done it time and time again. So
It's funny. I was looking at the screen and I can see you all blurred and moving in the background. As you guys can see, we're in the same room,
we are in the same room.
just in the
And
background
let's
there.
see. Hold
Hey,
on.
if
I'm going
I'm
to
gonna
show
be on,
Instagram again.
if I'm gonna be on screen,
Oh, you're seeing the mess.
if I'm gonna be on
We have
screen,
a whole mess going
yeah,
on.
it's
It's
because
ugh.
I have,
Dan is building computers here.
yep, and I'm finally at the end of that saga.
Can I just say I've heard this for the past 6 months. Dan has been saying that he's
Yeah,
at the end of the
yeah.
saga. And this weekend, he said he was going to pack up all the situation he's got going on. And I was so excited. And then on Monday, I came to the office and it was like, oh, well,
I got
um,
another bonus tip.
go ahead.
If you want listeners to
He's
stick
distracting me
around,
from that.
if you want, no, you just made the point
Oh,
of this
okay.
tip for me.
Okay, go ahead.
If you want listeners to stick around, avoid
Avoid what?
rambling.
Avoid rambling. Really, Dan?
Keep it structured and easy to follow, like we were just saying. And the one thing,
Mm.
it's funny, I saw you put in the notes here. Keep your intro short and keep
Amy's
keep
laughing at us.
keep your say keep your intros short and engaging.
Yes.
Don't spend 5 minutes talking about your breakfast. That's the whole point of our podcast in the beginning.
Well,
So, for people who may not have watched our podcast,
or heard it.
Julie has an interview.
Yes, it's an interview
It's an
podcast.
interview podcast. It's typically 30 to 40 minutes, but we record just us in the
A
beginning
little
doing a
tete-a-tete.
chit chat thing. And I'm like, are you sure people like to listen to this? And
Listen, I hear that
apparently
all the
people
time.
like it.
If you go to our reviews, by the way, we have over almost 100 five-star reviews. 5 stars. And the majority of the reviews say they love our interaction, kind of like
I
what we're
know.
doing here.
So I haven't been able to bail.
He has not been able to bail.
I tell you, if I'm going to
Oh,
be on
Amy says she loves the opening.
if
Thank you,
if
Amy.
I thank you. If I'm going to be on camera, I think I need to upgrade my camera and I need to put my desk someplace different because I got the lighting for her. It it
Mhm.
it it is literally
Yeah, hold
it's
on. I'll
up.
show people where the lighting is.
It's
See
like
the lighting? Oh, that's
it's
my
like
lights.
2 feet from my
Yeah.
face, so I look whiter than I actually am.
Yeah.
So
And
maybe I just tan.
maybe you should.
I think I'm
First of
good.
all, Dan used to have his desk next to me.
Yes.
And at one point, we had to like move it because if I was recording, which I was doing a lot of recording, especially when I had the radio show, he would be coming back and forth. And oh, So annoying and distracting.
All right, Julie.
Okay, let's tighten it up.
We're in the home run.
We're in the home stretch. Go ahead.
I'm hungry.
Oh, well, I had dinner.
So number 4. This is yeah, she
Yeah.
actually got me dinner. She's like, we ate without you, but I brought you something. But can we record this first?
All right, go for
So
it.
can we go live first? I'm like, all right, the
Okay.
podcast launch plan. And this is
Yes.
something, at Go Confidently services
Hmm.
that we actually supply, that we provide for our clients.
Hey, Pearl. Pearl just joined the live, or maybe she
Hey.
left. I don't know. Anyway.
So how do you get your podcast out to the world? And these are some steps Julie's going to
Yeah,
save. Julie's going to share with
that's
you
right.
on these are the basic steps.
These are very basic. And again, is when we work with somebody, we go through this and we create a strategy and we discuss these at length and we create something that is very individualized for what they want to do and how they want to do it. But your launch plan to launch with a bang, you want to go ahead and start with 3 to 5 episodes. Why do you want to do that? We have the tendency to want to binge on something. And if we like what we hear, it's very disappointing when all of a sudden we heard it all and there's nothing else. We've been watching a new show and we blew past the first 5 episodes. And when we got to the end, we're like, that's it. And then life kind of gets in the way. And sometimes you may forget to go back.
Mm-hmm.
So for that reason, you want to go ahead and have 3 to 5 episodes that people can binge on, and you can then get into a cadence. The other thing that happens, we have a I was going to say a guest. We have a client that when she launched, we launched with 5 episodes, and it allowed her to then be able to get a break in recording because she had pneumonia. So it works out. So make sure that you're doing that. Now, ask your friends and family to leave a review and to listen. When we launched our podcast, our first episode got over 700. I don't know. I have to go back and look at them, but we had really strong numbers. And our first 20 episodes, in a month, we were getting about 50. And listen, it's not about the numbers, people, but it's about the momentum that you build for your show. So ask people to share it, to come alongside of you. And by the way, when I tell my clients, not your friends and family are not your clients, they're not, but they could be your listeners or they could be the cheerleaders that share your content with somebody else and promote it on social media. Promote, and by the way, be like we talked about yesterday, you have an ideal listener. Where is that ideal listener hanging out? If your ideal listener is someone who is a well established woman in their 50s, who's an executive and travels and does a lot, you may not be wanting to hang out on TikTok or on, well, maybe they're hanging out there. But or Instagram, maybe they're hanging out in LinkedIn. But it's important for you to create the content in places where people are going to see it.
Yeah, and it behooves you to go on LinkedIn, and
Mhm.
actually you can join groups on Facebook.
Yes, and that's another great way in which you can help promote your episode is by being a part of a community. When we launch a new podcast, the Confident You community typically comes alongside of the new podcast, and then we share the episodes, and everybody goes and listens and promotes and gets some other reviews in there for our Confident You member. Now,
Now, a little about this. So this is launched
mhm,
with a bang.
mhm,
So this is what you're doing. You got your 3 to 5 episodes, so listeners can binge on it. But there are steps right before that you have to do to get listed on the directories. That's something we can go in more detail. If you have questions about that, just let us know. But there's things like Apple Podcasts. It
mhm.
can take 24 to 72 hours to approve your new shows.
That's
So
right.
if you're launching this Wednesday
Yeah.
and Tuesday, you expect to upload your episode to, say you're using Buzzsprout. Well, if you're not approved on Apple already, it's not going to be there.
Mm,
So there's things
that's
that
right.
we do with our clients. We have them record in episode 0, which
Well,
could be a minute.
it could be a minute that you are recording this trailer, but
Mhm.
it's important for you to know that placing yourself in the directories is going to be very important. And
Yep.
we talked about this yesterday in the day one
And
of
what you
the
and what you want to
boot
do,
camp.
you want to get in those directories
Hmm.
weeks ahead of your launch.
Yeah.
And that
And you never
means,
know how long it's going to take, Dan.
yep, you never know. I've had Apple take 24 hours.
We've had
I've
Apple
had
take a
Apple
month.
I've had Apple take 12 minutes. And for some reason somebody took it was
Yeah.
more like 3 weeks.
It took about 3 weeks for our episode, and we didn't know
It was
that. So
weird.
this is why we're sharing this
Yeah.
in the boot camp, because we don't want you to go over and have the same things happen that kind of can create some bumps in the road when you're launching a podcast.
I hope this has given you guys something to chew on. Hope it's
Well,
helped. I hope it's given you questions. I hope it's given you a little confidence. I
yep.
hope it's given you a little excitement. I
Excuse me.
I'm
Yes.
always excited when somebody's launching a new podcast because
It's like a party. That's why we're
Mhm.
passionate about what we do. But here's the thing. This is day 2 of the boot camp, how to launch a podcast boot camp. And we talked about all the different tech and very basic stuff yesterday. Today, we're talking a little bit more about some of the the winning podcast formula. We've also talked about software and other recording tools
Mhm.
again, but most importantly, that launch plan. Plan your
Plan.
episode, plan your launch. Otherwise, you're going to fail. Plan or fail. That's the choices. Now,
Hey
here's
Julie,
some homework. Yes, Dan.
I was just about to ask you.
Mm-hmm.
Are you going to give out homework today?
I'm going to give a little bit of love work or homework,
Love
and this
work.
is your homework for day 2.
Okay.
Go and record a practice episode. And remember, you don't have to be fancy, but if you have a mic, this is the correct distance, according to the producer here of the show, that you should have. And record 2 or 3 or 5 minutes so that you feel a little more confident. Record the intro. In our 30 days launch plan, we have the ebook, and that's free. You can download it or you can ask me for it. I can send it to you. In that launch plan, right? We actually have some mm, plug and play sample scripts that you can create as an introduction to your podcast. Create an outline for your podcast. Maybe the first 2 or 3 episodes. What are they going to be about? What are the topics that you want to cover? And also, go ahead and research and sign up for a podcast platform. Don't wait. You can sign up and use a free account on Buzzsprout and definitely get moving. Or
Mhm.
even if you decided to do it on Podbean, I believe. And yesterday, and I apologize, but yesterday in my notes, I actually had the listing of all of the platforms that are free for you to host your website, your podcast.
Mhm.
And oh, look, guess who's joined us?
Who joined us?
Gabe. Hello, Gabe.
Hmm.
We miss you. When are you coming to Connecticut? Gabe is my brother from another mother. Okay.
Hey, Gabe.
Anyway, Dan.
So, Julie,
Yes.
so everyone, go ahead and post in the group when you've
Mhm.
completed your practice recording. We can give you
That's right.
feedback. Reach out to Julie if you want feedback there also.
Right. So
Now,
Julie at Go Confidently Coaching, or if you're in YouTube, no, you can leave me a message and I can get back to you. Or here's the thing, go download the 30-day plan at goconfidentlycoaching.com/quick links. If you're in Instagram, you can go into my profile and you'll see my links in there and you can get that launch plan. If you have any questions, you can always send the DM. We're always happy to answer any questions about how to launch. This boot camp is recorded. The replay is going to be in YouTube, so you can go to YouTube and watch it. If you're here for the live, it's here on, and you can watch day 2. And tomorrow we're going to go to day 3. And
tomorrow is our biggest day yet, and we're entering Julie's wheelhouse here.
ooh,
Not that some of this wasn't in her wheelhouse
everything is
already,
my wheelhouse at
but
times.
we'll edit this later,
Oh,
okay?
Lord. Okay, sure. We can edit this later.
No, you do it. because that's not in your wheelhouse.
What?
That's my wheelhouse.
What? Oh,
I was making a point. I was trying to be funny.
oh, Dean
Laugh or
trying to be
something.
funny.
I'm looking at your screen instead
Oh,
of at the camera. My
oh,
bad.
yeah, he's
Tomorrow's the
looking at me.
biggest day yet. We're talking about growing, marketing, monetizing your podcast.
And yes, those are really fun things that you can do. And by the way, if you're building a business or if you just want to have a message, we live in an age in which there's so many voices and your voice matters. Your message matters. There's something that
Mhm.
perhaps you're passionate about and you're not looking to grow a business, you're not looking to grow a brand, but you're looking to have your message out into the world. Podcasting is a phenomenal way to do it. And you can build relationships with your podcast. Now, of course, if you're promoting a book, if you are someone who is looking to grow a brand, a business, podcasting is a great way to be able to create that like, know, and trust, that
Mhm.
know, like, and trust with your clients. And I
Yeah.
am so grateful to you, Dan, for being here
I am
and
grateful that I'm
putting
here
off your
too.
dinner. But again, growing, marketing, and monetizing. How to monetize a podcast. I often get asked that.
Mhm.
And that has been one of the things that I'm excited to talk about from the very beginning.
Very cool.
So until
So
tomorrow, my friends, don't forget, go
go
confidently
confidently
in
in
the
the
direction
direction of
of your
your
dreams.
dreams. We did it.
We did it.
We did the
So
thing together. See?
we